Hey guys, welcome to the Silver Report. Here we are, Monday, February 20th, 2017, and let's get into some of the economic factors that will be playing a part into the price of precious metals. And now, we see when it comes to labor statistics, the Federal Reserve has been in the news all over, continuously. Different chairmen, different heads of different Federal Reserve departments keep coming out saying interest rate hikes, interest rate hikes. We know this will crash the markets. And what is some of their justification? They try to justify it by this meeting their employment goals. And really what we've faced in this country has been an end of employees, especially for massive firms. Most of the surviving companies in the United States, the economic crisis was so damaging. Most of the surviving companies, and there's been a lot of acquisitions and mergers, companies like Kraft and Heinz, they've pretty much taken over all manufacturing of food and labeling of food. And it's more than that. Other companies, all the ones that were able to weather the storm, went up and bought up all of the failing companies. So it's been consolidated. And from these major companies, from Google to Walmart, what we see is the end of employees. At an unprecedented level, never before have American companies tried so hard to employ so few people. The outsourcing wave that moved apparel-making jobs to China, call center operations to India, is just likely happening inside companies across the U.S. in almost every industry. And so the men and women who unload shipping containers at Walmart stores, the warehouses are provided by trucking company Schneider National Inc.'s logistic operation, which in turn subcontracts to temporary staffing agency, Pfizer Inc. And they use contractors to perform the majority of its clinical drug trials last year. The contractor model is so prevalent that Google parent Alphabet Inc., ranked by Fortune magazine as the best place to work for 7 of the past 10 years, it roughly equals numbers of outsourced workers and full-time employees. Now, the benefits to companies of hiring contractors is, number one, they could pay them less. As we saw after the wake of mass layoffs within the United States, after we saw massive losses of employment, raising unemployment numbers, and then when the funding for unemployment insurance began to wear out, what we saw is the rise of temp agencies, vendors, contractors. And so when it comes to Google, they test drive Google's self-driving cars, review legal documents, make products easier and better to use. They manage marketing, data products. They do many other jobs. And so the big difference is that they don't need to give them full-time benefits. They don't need to pay health insurance. And more than that, it makes it much more difficult, for example, for someone who starts at an entry-level position to be able to move and to earn his way, so there's no upward mobility within major companies anymore, because most of the jobs in between are being outsourced for a cheaper rate. In essence, they've converted us to the slave shops that they've done in China. The shift is radically altering what it means to be a company and a worker. Of course, it gives more flexibility for companies to shrink the size of their employee base, also pay, benefits, and it also means less job security for workers. There's very little chance of ever moving up the ranks within a company. For companies, the biggest allure of replacing employees with contract workers is more control over costs. They could pay less. Contractors help businesses keep their full-time in-house staff lean and flexible, enough to adapt to new ideas and changes in demand. For workers, the changes often lead to lower pay and making surprisingly harder to answer the simple question, where do you work? In essence, because they don't have full-time benefits. They no longer are connected to a company, but in fact just working to pay their highly inflated rents. Because most of these companies are located in the city centers where we have very inflated housing prices most of their money is being used for rent, for food, as we have these inflated food prices, just to live, just to get by. And so they are working longer for less money, and they really don't have a choice. Economists, they say the parallel workforce created by the rise of contracting during the crisis, it's helping to fuel income inequality between people who do the same jobs. So among different companies, what we're seeing is that major companies are using contractors, they're outsourcing labor, they're able to pay less, they're able to have a much lower bottom line. And on top of that, other companies are seeing this, and it's on the rise. No one knows how many American workers work as contractors because they don't fit neatly in the job categories tracked by the government agencies. So it ranges in estimates from 3% to 14% of the nation's workforce. That's 20 million people. One of the narrowest definitions of outsourcing, workers hired through a contracting company to provide on-site labor for a single client, rose to 2% of all U.S. workers in 2015, and that's up from 0.6% in 2005. So this is a new development, and it really shows just how much things have changed. Contract firm workers with more than one client was not existent in 1995. As we see in 2015 and beyond, that it's now dominant. Contract workers, independent contractors, on-call workers, temporary help agency workers, contract firm workers with one client. So what we're seeing is that people are finding it harder and harder to get jobs. More than that, we've seen this rise of these temp agencies. So people can go to work and get done with the day and just get a check. So we've not seen a rise back to full employment. We've just seen checks coming and people kicked off of the unemployment rolls. Also a redefining of what it means to be unemployed. Companies which disclose few details about their outside workers are rapidly increasing the number and the types of jobs seen as ripe for contracting. At large firms, 20 to 50% of the total workforce often is outsourced, according to staffing executives. And so what we see in oil, gas, pharmaceuticals, outside workers sometimes outnumber employees by at least 2 to 1. And so janitorial work, cafeteria services, they've disappeared from most company payrolls long ago. A similar shift is underway for higher paying white-collar jobs such as research scientist, recruiter, operations manager, loan underwriter. And also with this, they're able to cut their C-level executives. They're able to cut managers. They're able to cut recruiters. Most companies, I'm sure, would be surprised by the amount of their products that are put forth without being touched by their own employees. What they're saying, though, is that this trend, they predicted, the consulting firm Accenture PLC predicted last year that one of the 2,000 largest companies in the world will have no full-time employees outside of the C-suite within 10 years. So we will literally be working for no benefits, no pay, as a result of this change, and it's something that the major companies desire, and they have control because of the lack of employment, the lack of full-time jobs, the lack of competitive wages. It is now the company's market. The labor pool is so broad that they can draw from, but they now need to pay their employees less. They can sublease it out next to a Lowe's, standing out front. And so what we're seeing is very dangerous for the U.S. economy, and it also paints a much different picture than these economists that are stepping up describing how we are in need of interest rate hikes. What we are watching is the collapse of an empire, the collapse of an economy. And the fact that they're not being honest, they're not being upfront, is exactly why it's time to take steps to protect your money. Protect your wealth. Because what we see materializing as a result of adopting monetary policy according to false figures is going to be devastating to the true economy, which is in no way, shape, or form recovered, but is in the midst of an intense recession. And the reshaping of the entire United States economy is crushing down on the American workers. Things are not better. That's why wages have not increased, because employee numbers have dropped. All right, thank you guys for joining me here on the Silver Report. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe, like the videos, share the videos, get the word out. I thank you all so much for stopping by, and as always, stay safe.